Hello viewers, my name is Jingo David, a teacher of biology at Seroma Christian High School. Seroma Christian High School is located in Mukono district in a village called Chetume off Patusi Road. Last time we looked at a summary of biology knowledge and biology skills of the entire syllabus. And I promise you that we shall look at the knowledge and the skills of each topic. So today I'm choosing one of the most vital topics, that is nutrition. So we are going to look at the summary of the knowledge and the skills of nutrition. And then after it, we shall look at another topic. I want to remind you of some skills which we summarized in the previous lesson. We had a skill to define. We had a skill of defining, which has the same requirement as what is. We had a skill of distinguishing. We had a skill of compare. We can have another of what is meant by. List, and so on. So in this particular session, we are going to look at the knowledge of nutrition and all the skills in it. Starting with the definition. Nutrition, define nutrition, or what is nutrition? Nutrition, we can define it using this summary. Nutrition is the process. We looked at it as an example of life processes, or the 7 categories of living things. And we shortly defined it. I can remind you that nutrition is the process by which organisms obtain and utilize food. Obtain and utilize food. So nutrition is the process by which living things obtain and utilize food. We are calling it a process because it goes through stages. Obtaining food and utilizing it goes through stages. Basing on the first word we are seeing, obtain food. Basing on how organisms obtain food, we can categorize nutrition into 2 types, basing on how they obtain food. The first type is autotrophic nutrition. And the second type is heterotrophic nutrition, basing on how organisms obtain food. The word autotrophic nutrition, or the word autotrophic, is derived from 2 words. That is, autos which means self, and the word trophic is obtained from the word trophos, which means feeding. So, in autotrophic nutrition, we have organisms feeding themselves. And how do they feed themselves? They feed themselves by making their own food. So, autotrophic nutrition is a type of nutrition where organisms obtain their food by making it themselves. So, here organisms obtain their food by making it. So, organisms make their own food. And that food, they make it from simple raw materials. From simple raw materials. And the whole process requires the use of energy. Requires the use of energy. Uh, Whereas heterotrophic nutrition it is derived from two words, that is heteros, which means others, and trophic, just as we saw it here, it comes from the word trophos, which means feeding. So in heterotrophic nutrition, the organisms feed on other organisms. And that's because they cannot make their own food. So here, organisms feed on other organisms. And they either feed on whole of those organisms or their parts. They are organisms that feed on whole other organisms and others that just feed on their parts. For example, among the humans, we have the humans that are able to eat white ants with even their wings. And we have, when it comes to eating the cow, we just eat its parts. So, an example of organisms that feed by autotrophic nutrition is ourselves, the human beings. And now, autotrophic nutrition and heterotrophic nutrition are defined like this. So, if you are to go by the first skill, define what is autotrophic nutrition. Is the type of nutrition where organisms make their own food from simple materials using energy. Whereas heterotrophic nutrition is a type of nutrition where organisms feed on other organisms. If you are taught to distinguish, between autotrophic nutrition and heterotrophic nutrition, you just use their definitions and then separate them with this word. For example, if I'm taught to distinguish between autotrophic nutrition and autotrophic nutrition, I say autotrophic nutrition is the type of nutrition where organisms make their own food from simple raw materials using energy. While heterotrophic nutrition is a type of nutrition where organisms obtain their food by feeding on other organisms. So in that case, I will have answered the question which tells me to distinguish between autotrophic nutrition and the heterotrophic nutrition. Then suppose I'm told to compare. Comparing calls for giving similarities and differences. So we shall now giving the comparison requires you to have more knowledge about the two, so that you can be able to tell the similarities between them and the differences between them. Uh, and then what is meant by, we shall also see it requiring more knowledge. Now let's first develop more knowledge from autotrophic nutrition and heterotrophic nutrition. When it comes to autotrophic nutrition, we have seen that organisms make their own food from simple raw materials using energy. Now, there are only two sources of energy which organisms that feed autotrophically use. There are those organisms that use light as the source of energy for making their own food, and we have others that use energy from chemical reactions. Energy from chemical reactions. So, because of these two sources of energy for making food, we can further categorize autotrophic nutrition into two. The type of autotrophic nutrition where organisms are using light as the source of energy, it is called photosynthesis. It's called photosynthesis. Why is it called photosynthesis? The word photosynthesis is derived from two words, that is photos, which means light, and synthesis, which means to make. So, in photosynthesis, the organisms make their own food from simple raw materials using light energy, or using light as the source of energy. And an example of organisms that carry out photosynthesis, we have an example of organisms here that carry out photosynthesis. We have plants, we have algae, we have the green algae, and we also have photosynthetic bacteria. Now, for the organisms that use energy from chemical reactions, because of the word chemical, they fall under the category of autotrophic nutrition called chemosynthesis. So the word chemosynthesis is also derived from two words, chemo, standing for chemical reactions, and synthesis, standing for the word to make. So in chemosynthesis, the organisms make their own food from simple raw materials using energy from chemical reactions. So it means that when you are defining photosynthesis and chemosynthesis, you can use the general definition of autotrophic nutrition and then specify the source of energy or the kind of energy used in the process of making food. So, still applying our skills there. Suppose you are asked to define photosynthesis. Just say that photosynthesis is the process by which organisms make their own food from simple raw materials using light energy. Define chemosynthesis. Chemosynthesis is the process by which organisms make their own food, from simple raw materials using energy from chemical reactions. Still, when I'm asked to distinguish between photosynthesis and chemosynthesis, I just say photosynthesis we say that we use definitions and then separate them with the word coil. So distinguish between photosynthesis and chemosynthesis. In that case, I just say that photosynthesis is the process by which organisms make their own food from simple raw materials using light energy. While chemosynthesis is the process by which organisms make their own food from simple raw materials using energy from chemical reactions. Still, we can have a question asking us to compare photosynthesis and chemosynthesis. How do I compare chemosynthesis and photosynthesis? The similarities, we can pick the similarities from the definitions of each. When you are taught to compare, you are supposed to give similarities alone and differences alone. And those similarities and differences, you can pick them from the definitions we have given. For example, the first similarity, we can say that in both when we are giving the similarities, we use if we are giving the similarities between two things, we use the word both. In both photosynthesis and chemosynthesis, organisms make their own food. We are seeing it common. You give what is common to both. So in both photosynthesis and chemosynthesis, organisms make their own food. Another similarity we can see in both photosynthesis and chemosynthesis, food is made from simple raw materials. Another thing which I didn't comment about is that these simple raw materials are obtained from the external environment. That one can also give it as another similarity, that in both photosynthesis and chemosynthesis, the raw materials for making food are obtained from the external environment of the organism. Another similarity we can see is that in both photosynthesis and chemosynthesis, the energy is used in the process of making food. In both, energy is used. So those are four similarities. But there is one difference which we can be able to identify. And that one, we pick it from the difference in the source of energy for making food. In photosynthesis, the source of energy for making food is light. While in chemosynthesis, the source of energy for making food is obtained from chemical reactions. So, we can first pause at that as far as Heterotrophic Nutrition is concerned. But what I can promise you is that there are more details about photosynthesis, which we shall look at later. Let's first come back to Heterotrophic Nutrition. Heterotrophic nutrition, we say that organisms feed on other organisms. All these organisms that feed heterotrophically or by heterotrophic nutrition, they cannot make their own food. Now, these organisms that feed by heterotrophic nutrition, they have different ways of feeding. Just as we have seen that there we have photosynthesis and chemosynthesis, even when it comes to heterotrophic nutrition, we have organisms feeding differently. And we can clarify that by categorizing heterotrophic nutrition into types. So we have types of heterotrophic nutrition. We are going to recognize three types. The first type we are recognizing is Holozoic nutrition. Holozoic nutrition is a type of nutrition which is falling under heterotrophic nutrition. Another category we are recognizing is saprophytic. Saprophytic nutrition, we shall find other authors calling it saprotrophic. Saprotrophic. This word phytic, you can find some books substituting it with the word trophic. And you can find other authors substituting it with the word biotic. So, and that means feeding. So it can be called saprophytic nutrition or saprotrophic nutrition or saprobiotic nutrition. So when you find authors using those terms, just think that they are referring to the same thing. Then the third category is symbiosis. So these are the different types of heterotrophic nutrition. We can have a summary of what each means so that we can be able to attain those skills. Are we able to define holozoic nutrition? Do we know what holozoic nutrition is? Do we know what saprophytic nutrition is? Are we able to distinguish holozoic nutrition from saprophytic nutrition? Those are the skills. Are we able to distinguish saprophytic nutrition from symbiosis? Are we able to answer what is meant by? We shall look at that. Are we able to compare? Now, holozoic nutrition. What are we summarizing here? Here in holozoic nutrition, the organisms taking solid food. Taking solid food. So here we have organisms taking in solid food, or we can say complex food, and then that complex food is digested in the gut. Digested in the gut. And we have any products of digestion absorbed. So at the end of digestion, we have absorption taking place and egestion. And this is common in free living animals. Free living animals. That's where the word zoic comes from. Zoic. Holo means something solid, and zoic is derived from the word zoos, which means animals. But it's not that all animals feed by holozoic nutrition, but it is only free living animals that are able to feed by holozoic nutrition. How can we identify those free living animals? Those are animals that have the alimentary canal, which is also called the gut or the digestive tract. So if you see any animal that is having the alimentary canal, that is an example of an organism that feeds by holozoic nutrition. And how is the feeding done? The organisms take in complex food, which is digested in the gut, and then the end products of digestion are absorbed and the undigested food plus other wastes are ingested. So that is Holozoic nutrition. Then saprophytic. The word sapro was derived from the word sapros, which means rotting, which means something rotting. And the phytic, trophic, that one means feeding. So in saprophytic nutrition, we have organisms feeding on dead or decaying matter. So here we have organisms feeding on dead or decaying matter. On dead or decaying matter. That is the type of saprophytic nutrition. That is saprophytic nutrition. And we shall see that in saprophytic nutrition, these organisms that feed by saprophytic nutrition, they secrete their enzymes onto the, for example, okay, here we have what we call, we have digestion taking place before ingestion, or digestion takes place outside the, digestion takes place outside the organism. We shall later understand more details about digestion, but here in saprophytic nutrition, digestion occurs outside the organism. So it means that the organism secretes digestive enzymes onto the food which is outside it. Then that food is broken down into soluble materials which are then absorbed, which is different from what happens during Holozoic nutrition. In the Holozoic nutrition, digestion takes place inside the organism. Inside the organism. But we shall later see that in both, digestion takes place outside the cells, outside the organism, and outside the cells, and outside the cells. Even here, digestion takes place outside the cells, but inside the organism. So here, digestion is outside the cells, but inside the organism. But inside the organism. So these details I'm adding will enable us to give similarities and differences between Holozoic nutrition and the saprophytic nutrition. I think we can go through that before we look at the last category of heterotrophic nutrition. Define Holozoic nutrition. Holozoic nutrition is the type of nutrition where organisms take in complex food which is digested inside the gut, and then the end products of digestion are absorbed as the undigested food is ingested. Saprophytic nutrition is the type of nutrition where organisms feed on dead decaying matter, on dead or decaying matter. If I'm told to distinguish, I use the definitions of each. Distinguish between Holozoic nutrition and saprophytic nutrition. I define this And after defining this, I put there the word while, and then I bring in the definition of saprophytic nutrition. What if I'm told to compare Holozoic nutrition with saprophytic nutrition? It means that in that case, I'm interested, I'm supposed to bring out the similarities and the differences. The first similarity is derived from the definition of the broad category where they are both falling. In both holozoic nutrition and saprophytic nutrition, the organisms feed on other organisms. Another similarity is coming from what we say that in both holozoic nutrition and saprophytic nutrition, digestion takes place outside the cells of an organism. And that's what we can summarize as extracellular digestion. Extracellular digestion. The opposite of the word extracellular digestion is intracellular. Intracellular. So the word intra means inside, whereas the word extra means outside. And these other words that are added, they are cellular. Cellular is coming from the word cells or cell, and then extra, we have said it comes from the word outside. So extracellular digestion is a type of digestion which takes place outside the cell of an organism, while intracellular digestion is a type of digestion which takes place inside the cells of an organism. So in case I'm asked to distinguish between intracellular digestion and extracellular digestion, I can use that. So in both holozoic nutrition and saprophytic nutrition, digestion is extracellular, meaning that digestion takes place outside cells of the organism. Then the difference we can be able to give, the differences we can be able to give, the first one is in saprophytic nutrition, the organisms feed on dead or decaying matter. Whereas in holozoic nutrition, the organisms feed on living matter. They don't wait the matter to die. The food is not to, they don't wait for the food to first die and start decaying. They feed on it when it is maybe freshly killed, but when it is still, before it dies completely and starts decaying. Then another difference we can see is that in holozoic nutrition, digestion takes place inside the body of the organism. For example, you eat food, and then that food is digested inside the alimentary canal. Though it is outside the cells, but it is inside your body. So it means that you first take in the food and then digest it from inside. Whereas in saprophytic nutrition, the organisms digest, or food is digested outside the whole body of the organism. Examples of organisms that feed by saprophytic nutrition. Remember that here we gave examples of all free living animals. In saprophytic nutrition, the examples of organisms we can see there, they include fungi and the saprophytic bacteria. Saprophytic bacteria. We shall later see that the bacteria are able to feed using all these modes of feeding. There are some bacteria that feed autotrophically. They are what? There are some bacteria we call, for example, photosynthetic bacteria, and we have others we call chemosynthetic bacteria because they feed by chemosynthesis. Then there are bacteria we call saprophytic bacteria because they feed by saprophytic nutrition. We don't have any bacteria which feeds by holozoic nutrition. Uh, the last category of holozoic nutrition is symbiosis. Symbiosis is the third category of holozoic nutrition. I mean of heterotrophic nutrition. This is the third category of heterotrophic nutrition. Uh, the word symbiosis, initially, it wasn't in the vocabulary of biology. It was actually introduced by a German scientist in 1879. That German scientist was called the Barry, but you don't need to know more about him. So when it was introduced, according to him, it was derived from two words, that is syn and bios. This one, syn, means with, and bios means life, or which I can simplify as living, the ability to live. So when the two are combined, according to him, he said that symbiosis is where two or more different organisms live, or where we have two or different organisms living with each other, or having life with each other. The definition can be simplified as a close association between two or more organisms of different species. Between two or more organisms, two or more living organisms. Okay, let me just leave it because organisms of different species. Different species. A species is a group of organisms that can interbreed to form fertile offsprings. For example, humans can interbreed with fellow humans to form other humans, but you can't find a human interbreeding with a hen, a rabbit, or a rat. Now, which kid they give birth to? So, a species. So, different species can mean like humans and tapeworms. They are of different species. A cow and a tick, they are of different species. But these two, in symbiosis, they should be close together and moving together. That is a close association between two or more organisms of different species. Now, in such an association, in the early 1970s, there are scientists who thought that in such an association, every organism benefits, every partner benefits. But it was later discovered that there are some associations where there are some symbiotic associations where both partners benefit, and others where one partner benefits as the other is harmed, and others where one benefits and the other neither benefits nor loses. So because of that, symbiosis is categorized into three. It is categorized into what we call mutualism, and another category called parasitism, and then the other category called commensalism. In mutualism, both partners, here both partners benefit. We are calling them partners in that association. Both partners benefit. In parasitism, we have one partner, one partner called the parasite benefiting, and the other partner called the host is harmed. So for it, instead of benefiting, it is harmed. Then in commensalism, we have one partner called the commensal. One partner called the commensal benefits, and the other also called the host is neither harmed nor benefits. Neither benefits nor is harmed. So when you are defining mutualism, you just say is a close association between two or more organisms of different species in which both partners benefit. Parasitism, you repeat the same and say in which one partner called the parasite benefits as the other called the host is harmed. Then in commensalism, one partner called the commensal, so the close association between two or more organisms of different species in which one partner called the commensal benefits and the other called the host neither benefits nor is harmed. So these are the categories of the three categories of symbiosis. What you can find out are the examples. In mutualism. So the assignment which I'm leaving with you is to be able to distinguish mutualism and parasitism. I've already illustrated for you how to distinguish. Look for similarities and differences between mutualism and parasitism, between any of these two pairs. And then you also look for the examples of organisms that feed by mutualism, and those ones that feed by parasitism, and those ones that feed by commensalism. So that's where we shall pick up from in our next lesson. My name is Jingo David, a teacher of biology at Seroma Christian High School, which is located in Mukono, Chetume, off Katosi Road. Thank you. We shall meet again and pick up from there.